When I came to write The Secret Life, I realised that these three individuals that I concentrated on in these long-form non-fiction pieces, they weren't typical individuals. I mean, they weren't representatives of a whole mass of other people like them. In that sense, they're old-fashioned characters. They represent nothing so much as themselves, really. There's a lot of eccentricity in them. Nevertheless, they do suggest a new way of having a life. It's to exist more largely on the internet than you do in your flesh and blood, concrete pavement life. That's the great change in our time for me. And I wanted to get inside that and write about that reality, because it is a reality, closer to surrealism or hyperrealism than ordinary reality, perhaps. But it is nevertheless a fact of our everyday existence now, that a generation is coming through, people in their teens now, are much more hyper aware of what you might call the presentational than we ever were. We were no marks, we were invisible as children. We hardly figured on the great map of the world. And that was part of the essential joy of childhood, was that you were away in your sort of, bucolic space or your urban space, rather sort of unknown to the greater world. You had no contact with it. But now, every kid playing a war game at home in their box bedroom can be playing in company with or against kids in Pasadena or in Tokyo or in Brisbane or in Fiji. Through their headset, they're part of a global sense of themselves, and their sense of the presentational is everywhere in how they talk, how they exist, and how they think about the world, including how they think about the world politically. So the globalization of self was a kind of exhausting but fascinating subject for me. And I wanted to write a book that would somehow get inside the extreme versions of those tendencies to live through the internet, to live through, as it were, the question of power and personality in the digital world. Because these are new forces in our political and social and psychological lives. There's no getting away from it. But I felt I hadn't read the book that I wanted to read. I read the pieces quite. I look now and see that question of a stable self, a privacy, a relationship that you have with another individual that's only between the two of you, whether that be in business or in sexual relations, it's actually all up for questioning now. We all behave increasingly as if we're constantly being watched.